They have wheels for a reason. That's right. I have to say this because it's the polite thing to do. This is a recording. So we have to make sure we watch our P's and Q's, Mr. Banda.
Can we unrecord? Because that never happens, you know.
Well, if you want to say something off the record, we can say it at the end.
Okay.
But we will stop recording. But yeah, we gotta be careful. Okay. So we're gonna get started today. So if you could introduce yourself, sir. What is your title at the city of Rochester?
Because Christy begged she wouldn't go by the pool and have a coffee or something with us.
No, she declined, I'm afraid.
Oh man, you guys are missing the best part of the show. So my name's Nik Banda. I'm old, so I've been in this for like 45 years. I've been a public servant. My dad was a public servant in Dearborn for 50 years. He actually invented senior housing in the United States. My dad kind of grew that with the city of Dearborn, and I fell into public service myself a long time ago. I worked for the city of Southfield for 30 years as the economic development director and the city planner. So you guys are all too young, but Southfield really grew from a very affluent white community to a very diverse community. And we watched us build, 27 million square feet of office in Northland, all these retail places. I retired like 13 years ago to come work in Rochester with a very young city manager that brought in a team of us older guys that we could kind of double dip, get our pensions and work here. And I've been here for 13 years doing economic development. So my title is the longest title in the history of the world. It's Deputy City Manager, Community and Economic Development Director. I happen to be the city forester. I happen to be the sign ordinance officer and blah, blah, blah.
Okay, stop there. You speak very fast and they can't write it down. So Nik Banda, Nikbanda, Nik Banda, and then his title is now break it down word by word so they can write it down.
Right. So Deputy City Manager.
Deputy City Manager.
And then the Community and Economic Development Director.
Community and Economic Development Director.
That's what's on my card. And then I happen to be the city forester in charge of the tree program, and then the sign ordinance officer, which any sign that comes into the city, I have to prove that also. So
signs, SIGN, signs. So any sign that comes into the city, he has to approve for spelling, grammar, and punctuation.
That's more important than it's how many if you go downtown, you see all the signs. So there's it's a thing.
Yes, it is a thing. All right. So what do you do in this job on a daily basis? So can you outline like a typical day in Nik's world? Okay.
So technically, for instance, right now our city manager is off on maternity leave. And so by charter, I step in as the city manager in his absence anytime he's gone. So that's probably the top part of my day. So what I do on a day-to-day basis is every city has planning, economic development going on. So there's a couple ways to do it. You can have in-house planning staff, or you can have consultants. So we have consultants that process the plans that when you guys were doing your business development projects, if you were ever to get to be a business, you have to go through me, I guess. So on a day-to-day basis, people call and they want to know, are there vacancies in town? What would it take to open a business? There's a business in town we don't like. How do you get rid of it, et cetera? So on a daily basis, I do the city planning. So it's amazing how probably 2-3 hours a day, people will call in, whether residents that want to put an addition on their home, or a new business that wants to move into town, or somebody that wants to expand in town, or it's a financial institution that wants to know what happens if a building burns down. So on a daily basis, we take care of that. I'm sorry Christy couldn't be here because she's
yeah, we're gonna get her to come in another time because she's such an integral part of your world and what you guys do, and you tag team on a lot of this stuff. So we definitely bring her in and talk to her. So
Yeah, because I get paid 38% of my salary is paid by the Downtown Development Authority. So I work with her also, or for her, I always like to say. And that's recruiting businesses downtown, making sure they're happy. Then all the projects that come in, the roads and the sewers and all that, I kind of oversee that. I oversee the building department for permits, et cetera. So it's a
Okay.
fun job. It's a fun job.
Right. Okay. So prior to this, you talked about you were in Southfield, so we want to write that down. And like you alluded to the fact that, you know, it was predominantly white at the time, but now it's incredibly diverse. And you were in Southfield for how long?
Almost 30 years. And I'll tell you what, as a young man growing up, I started there as a cartographer, which is a person who draws maps. It's a long story, but I worked my way up quickly to be the city planner. And it was a white, Jewish, affluent community that when Iraq, when you guys again don't remember all this, you weren't even born, I don't think, but
No.
when Iraq went through a civil war with a bad gentleman, a lot of the Chaldeans, which are Christian Iraqis, moved to United States to get away from the oppression. They settled mainly in Southfield. That changed the whole culture of a city. And then the African Americans coming out of Detroit were like, I don't want to be in Detroit anymore. That's when Detroit was really struggling. So they came to Southfield because we had great public schools.
Right.
And I got to go through that whole transition of, we became Southfield the center of it all, that we welcomed everybody, truly a mixing bowl of humans. And I got to go through that for 20 years. It was awesome.
Absolutely. And I mean, Southfield is such an urban metropolis in itself. I mean, it could be its own Detroit, in it, as it were.
And actually, yeah, and you're right, Karen, it's called an edge city. And edge cities are the first tier of cities outside of a major metropolitan area, which was Detroit. And technically, when the main city dies, the first ring cities die. And there's a book written called Edge City. It's about Southfield. And we did not die. We flourished because we said, hey, bring everybody on. We built high rises. We built millions of square feet of retail, 17,000.
It's cool. Amazing. So you've been at Rochester now 13 years, and this was your retirement plan. And what brought you, what kind of like brought you to Rochester? What was the draw to come to Rochester?
Well, politically, Southfield was going through a change, and I'm pretty headstrong, and I have a great pride in the community. And it was time. Sometimes it's better to let the younger people, somebody new, come in and go. And Rochester had the downtown that I didn't have in Southfield, and they wanted to make sure. I didn't even know what Rochester was, to be honest with you. I grew up in Dearborn, lived in Southfield. Rochester was out in the boonies somewhere. But when I met the new city manager, he said, no, we punch way above our weight class. We're a bigger city than you think. We only have 13,000 people and not that much business, but we drive Oakland County's northern tier. So it was a challenge for me. You know, I knew what I knew in Southfield. I thought I'd work there till I was 80, but different town, same circumstances.
You just told us our next question, which is, what is the population of Rochester? And we have been doing a little bit of research, but you know, we're kind of hovering on that 13,000, right?
Right. Yeah, we only went up like about not even barely 1,000 in the census. Again, we're mainly built out, and quite frankly, it's a factor of older people have bought homes in Rochester and made them worth $1 million. And guess what they don't have when they have that much money to build a new house like that? They don't have kids anymore. They're all grown and in school. So the population per household in Rochester went down in the last 10 years. So we evened out, and the schools want us to obviously attract families so that we can keep you guys full, but it's a balancing act. So we didn't go up that much. I think we went up maybe 3% over 10 years.
Yeah, we had noticed that. I had noticed that. And again, I mean, there's not much more space to build anything. So, you know, we are hovering, and, you know, my kids are going to get grown and move away. And, you know, Simon and I will be left there on Linwood. And yeah, that's just how it is. Okay, Rochester's occupancy rate as far as businesses. Now, I know this would be something that Christy would tell us, but, you know, we've got a really great occupancy rate, and that's a draw to come to Rochester and open up a business, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, through the pandemic, through ripping, if you guys should remember this, we ripped out Main Street 7 years ago, closed the downtown for 6 months, and we still held the occupancy rate back then of 98%. We're at 97.9% occupied. And any bills, if you see a building that's got a vacancy right now, there's somebody waiting to occupy it to get a building permit. It's incredible. And the reason that happens is we're not just Rochester. We serve, again, the greater Rochester area. So we could not survive on 13,000 people. But it's Oakland Township, Shelby, Troy, Rochester Hills, Auburn Hills. We're the kind of central downtown. And that makes businesses want to operate here. And even more remarkable is we don't have any chains. If you noticed, if you go to the Village, which we love the Village, they have the chain places, right? We're a boutique downtown. And Christie's made it very clear, and their DDA board, Downtown Development Board, that we want to stay that way. We like these small little businesses. Now they're more at risk to go out because it might be mom and pop running the store, but it hasn't happened. So we've been very lucky to, if somebody leaves, we see it as an opportunity to get a new business in. Like Three Dog Bakery was there on Main Street, loved them, and he ended up, the pandemic got to him, and they closed, but then a Le Macaron, I think that's how you say it, store opened. Some retired GM guy with a lot of money decided to open a store selling macarons, and we get a new entity into town, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, and we have down the bottom of our sheet a business failure, and that was that Three Dog Bakery. I don't know whether you guys remember it. Didn't do so well, and especially through the pandemic, closed. But La Macaron, has anybody been there to get those cute little French little patisseries?
Yeah, the guy's really funny.
The guy's really funny. He's very passionate. He wants to hire. Yeah, he wants to hire any kid that walks in there and has any interest in his business. He will give you his business card and he'll want to hire you immediately. So if you're looking for a job, there's one right there.
Absolutely.
Okay, I just put a map up on the board for everybody. Let's talk a bit about zoning. So here is a map of Rochester. Can you talk to the kids about zoning and how this impacts your decision on whether a business can come into Rochester?
Well, absolutely. So technically, this is a future land use map. This is map, and this is important because what happens is basically a zoning map is the same thing as future land use. It's pretty close. So you have categories, right? Residential, and you have intensities of zoning. So if you look at the map, the light yellows are residential. The darker yellows are a little more step up of condominiums, attached duplexes, things like that. And then you get to the light blues, which are office. Darker blues are a little bit more intense office, medical, office research. Then you get to the reds, which are the commercial, and then you get to the browns, which are the mixed uses. So in a zoning map, there's probably 20 different categories, and every piece of property is zoned in Michigan and almost in every state except for in Texas. Houston, Texas doesn't have zoning. They're one of the only ones in the country. It's the Wild Wild West. But everybody's land is controlled by a certain zoning classification, and that dictates what you can do in that district. So what the future land use map is a part of a master plan. And right now, the city of Rochester, by state law, every 5 years, you have to go through an update of your master plan. That's where you talk about this map and say, hey, do we still want downtown to be mixed use? Do we want to not have it be mixed use anymore? Do we want to have more apartments? No more apartments. Do we want to have industrial? No industrial. So the industrial is in the purples at the bottom. So you reevaluate yourself every 5 years. That means you go out to the public, you do surveys, the county weighs in, and you try to make decisions for the next 5 years. So this map represents, I think this was the one from 4 years ago, 5 years ago. We're about to change it. The good news is Rochester is pretty solidly organized for planning. So we don't see major changes in the districts here. We find some of them, but that's it. So, yep.
I have a question, and it's the same question I ask every year because I still want a dog park.
I know.
And I still haven't got a dog park after 20 years of living here, Nik Banda. I mean, come on.
Linwood, we're putting it on Linwood.
Yeah, stick it in my backyard. I don't care.
Yeah.
Let's just make it legal to have a dog park. Is there any thoughts of what we're going to use this space where the river runs through and there's all that
Yep.
green land? Any thoughts
Yep.
on how we're going to use that space?
So what's happened in the last 5 years, it sucks that we have to use the word pandemic all the time, but because of the pandemic, it's changed people's outlooks on what you want to do. So I'm going to give you three quick projects. So at the corner, and I'll do yours last, at the corner of Elizabeth and Second, there was an office building and a warehouse owned by the Rewalds. That was torn down when the Rewalds built their new
That's right here.
headquarters on the river, right?
Yep.
Yep. All right. So that piece was got an approved site plan, went through the process 2 years ago to build a 6-story, 55 in Boulder, Bolder community for most sharing. It was like a European hotel. The rents were like $7,500 a month. Infinity pool on the top, a bar. It was incredible. So then the economy hits and he's building up in Oakland Township. It's like, whoa, I can't, I'm rich, but I'm not that rich. I'm not going to take on all of that. Then by the OPC, there's coming down the hill on Letica, there's a big property there that's got a lot of grade to it. 72 units, 6 buildings, 5 stories were going to be built, condominiums, so people could go live right next to the OPC. They were $1 million a piece. Their bid came in last spring at $450 a square foot to build it. It should have been $180 a square foot. With the price of raw materials and no help, it got so out of control they couldn't build it. Same thing on the riverfront. So on the riverfront, that's 13 acres owned by Mr. Suave. Mr. Suave is one of the richest men in Michigan. He's building a lot in downtown Detroit right now. He's had that property planned 3 times. It was approved for 12 6-story buildings back in 2002. Didn't build it. Got approved for 257 townhomes, condominiums, all through that project along the river. It's got big rain gardens on the river, a street. There's a community, didn't build it. And then right now he was looking at, they found out the ground is extremely unstable underneath it. It was an old mill and they didn't do a very good engineering job. Found out that, again, it would be millions of dollars per building extra to build on that. So what he's probably going to do is come back and build.
It's make a dog park.
Well, okay. So the problem is in our community survey, number one thing, everybody wants dog park. Our city leaders have said, you know what? We don't have the land, number one. It's private. If you can get Suave to donate the land by the river, great. If you don't, it could go on Rochester Hills and all of our people can go there because we don't have any spot. We don't want to turn Howlett or Elizabeth Park into a dog park. So we really don't have any land, Karen. That's the problem.
I know. But I think Mr. Suave just needs to like gift us it for a couple of years, you know?
And it's not out of the question because if they build just one building up on the front, that all the land by the river could be donated as a park. And that is a possibility. So don't give up on that hope yet.
Okay, one day. All right. So again, children, you know, guys, when you're looking at this map, you have to be very cognizant when you walk into Nik Banda's office. You're going to have to be very specific about what you want and where you want to place it. And he's going to look at the zoning guide and he's going to say yes or no, depending on, you know, this plan that the city's had for the last 4 years and we'll be revisiting in the next year. But it's important to know, and you can find any zoning guide for any city apart from Texas, Houston, because they don't have one. And so if you want to go in any city, you've got to look at the zoning prior. Does that make sense, you guys? Any questions about zoning? Excellent. All right, let's move on to permits. What kind of permits do you authorize at the city?
All right, so the first step, and let's say you came in and you wanted to run a business downtown in an existing building. So you would come into me, we would check make sure the zoning is appropriate for the use you want to do. So you want to open any kind of retail. We look in the commercial district. Yep, you can do that. Then it comes down to how much parking are you required to have by the zoning ordinance. So every city has required parking per use. So if you wanted retail, we take the gross square feet of your building, divide it by 200 square feet, you need 1 parking spot. If you have enough parking, then you go on to the next step, which would be meet with the building official and talk about the real permits, the building permits you would need to convert your space into what you want. So let me step back for 1 second. let's say you come into a property and say, you know, I'm going to buy this old building on First Street. I'm going to tear it down. You can't just get a building permit. You have to go to the planning commission and do a site plan process. So in every city, you would look up, how do I get through the site plan process? And that can take anywhere from here, it's 60 to 90 days. In Rochester Hills, it could be 6 months. In Troy, it could be a year. Just to get your plans in front of the board that makes the decision if you can use that land for that. That's for a new building or an addition to a building. Even like Par Pharmaceutical, when they build a new building, they have to come in every single time to go through the site plan process. So complicated further, in our town, we have this great tool called special projects. We've identified about 13 locations in town, including the river site, and we call them PICAs, P-I-C-A. It's a potential intensity change area. That means that our underlying zoning on the future land use map is a guide. It says, hey, we would like to see some kind of mixed use, apartments, a dog park, whatever. And you can come into the city and voluntarily ask for something that's not allowed in that zoning district. And you can make a deal kind of with the city, the planning commission, and then the city council to show that what you want to build in this town furthers the goals of the city of Rochester and the region. So if you can do that, sometimes you can do some things that are a little bit pushing the envelope. So, and once you get through that process, then you come in to get a building permit. We have a building clerk, you fill out the forms. You might need mechanical permit, electrical, heating and cooling, or plumbing. So all those different factions, you have to have licensed contractors pull the permits for commercial work. People at their home can have a homeowner's permit and they can pull it on their own, and then they're liable for anything that goes wrong. So you usually want to use a contractor. So, and once you get through that process and you are ready and everything is done and inspected, you get the golden ticket, which is the certificate of occupancy. That's what you want to get. That tells anybody, your lender, your insurance company, that you have been approved by the city for your use. And if something happens to that building, it burns down or whatever, you can redo it. You can reoccupy that building. So that's the key to any place, is getting a certificate of occupancy.
Yeah. And so just going back to parking, because I want them to write this down.
Yep.
So you gave it a little equation, and it was, you take, so say that I want to go into the space where Greens is right now, right? So
Yep.
Greens is closing, they're selling that property. How many square feet is Greens?
5,000 on each floor, 5,200 and 5,200. So 10,400.
Let's do 10,000, just make it the math easy. So Greens on Main Street, write this down, 10,000 square feet. And Nick said, let's divide that by 200.
For retail.
For retail. Let's divide it by 200, and then it's going to give us the number of parking spaces that Greens needs to have. And luckily enough for Greens, what's behind Greens?
Now you get more complicated. All right, so that's a perfect example. It's happening right now because Greens is for sale. So on the first floor, presently, there is retail. So they have no parking. They have actually 4 spaces in the back, but basically they have no parking. We have the deck, the city deck behind them. When we built the city decks, we had to come up with a way to pay for them. So it's obviously an hourly rate, but all the people on Main Street, this is really complicated, but for 50 years, they were in a zone called the parking exempt zone. It didn't matter what you put on Main Street, you didn't have to have any required parking. And the way parking works is it's a sliding scale. So retail, any retail, 1 for every 200. If you wanted to put a medical office in there, it's for every 1 to 200 square feet. If you wanted to put a restaurant with no alcohol, you divide that same square footage by 150 square feet. If you wanted a bar restaurant, you divide by 100. So obviously a bar restaurant needs twice as much parking as retail. So right now Greens is retail. So we grandfathered them in 2017 and said, hey, even though you don't have any parking, the ordinance said you needed 50 spaces. Upstairs, they use that for storage. That's a really low parking count. For every 1,700 square feet, you need a space. So they needed 5 spaces for that. The people that have looked at Greens in the last 2 months are retail on the first floor, maybe I want to turn the upstairs into condominiums. So for every unit you would put on the second floor, they need 2 spaces. So they're going to be short required parking. So what this city allows you to do is if you're going to be short parking, you can buy parking spaces. It's called pay in lieu of providing parking. So we know we don't want you to buy a building next to you and tear it down to build parking. So you go to this planning commission and say, hey, I will pay you now. It's only $1,000 per space that I can't provide to go into that building for the right to use your public parking. You pay it one time. So if you need extra 10 spaces, you pay 10 grand, goes into the parking fund. That helps pay for the maintenance, meters, decks, all that stuff. So it's a little bit complicated, but unless somebody comes in with retail on the first floor and storage on the second, they're gonna have to pay something for parking. Most likely they will.
Yeah, for sure, because that's an amazing space and I'm really
Yes.
excited about. Can you give us any hints on what kind of people are looking at that, or is that confidential right now?
No, I can. So nothing's official, but I can tell you, I know who wants that the worst, which is a local, extremely successful in Washington Township on Van Dyke brewery, a brew pub and a restaurant. So people would love to have that be a 2-story restaurant, just, open up the windows on the first floor, etc., and try to keep the historic background of the building. But parking, it gets really expensive because they probably have to pay $100,000 at least in parking. So that would be what they would like. We've seen retail and mostly condominiums on the second floor. People would love to live downtown and live below it and work below it. So I've looked at somebody that wants a workspace where they just open the whole thing up, even more than Greens is now. And then it would be a little coffee cafe, all the go in there and work, and it's a share space, if you will.
Like a WeWorks, like a
Yes. Yep.
That would be cool. That would be really
That'd be cool. Yeah, if somebody wanted to put a music venue in there, again, parking gets a little bit crazy, and then we're just looking at retailers.
No hookah lounges?
No, so no hookah lounges allowed in that space because we've identified only one space in town that you could have a hookah lounge, and that doesn't work for anybody. So then that's kind of how you keep undesirable uses out of town. You change your future land use map to be current with today's, it's not going to be a provisioning center either, because here we go with the marijuana, but our town said we're not interested in the faction of the marijuana business. Like you can be a medical provider, an office that evaluates people for medical marijuana. You could be a grow operation. You could be a transport operation. You could be a provisioning center or a dispensary. Rochester made a decision 4 years ago that our town's too small. It really doesn't fit our profile officially. Probably does now, but and so we're not providing any areas for that to happen. Now, there's a lot of taxes that businesses are providing to the communities, like Detroit even, and some of the communities have embraced the marijuana scene. Rochester has not. So there will not be a dispensary or a provisioning center or a hookah lounge or a topless Coney Island, which somebody once asked if they could do, believe it or not. We don't allow any of those stuff. No strip clubs, nothing like that.
Yeah. And that goes down to our key demographic. I mean, your key demographic is who you serve. So if you could sum up your key demographic in a couple of words, what would that be?
Bougie, one word. We're bougie.
We're bougie.
So bougie is, so disposable income is high, education's high, expectations of service is high, and we like boutique-y, bougie things in town. So, and it works for us. And not every town's like that, but you all know that. We don't even have a subway anymore in town. You can go to Penn Station, you can go to the delis. We're a little more bougie, which is okay.
Right.
Again, not for every town.
It definitely serves our demographic, for sure. So I guess that's what makes us unique, right? That makes us unique, that we've been able to keep the downtown home feel without many different, chains coming in, and keeping that family integrity. Would you say what makes us unique?
Exactly. And that's what makes us unique is exactly that. We are, for instance, where the Cupcake Station was, instead of a big chain coming in, Bakehouse 46 partnered with Blake's Cider Mill and the Cupcake Station, and then they redid the whole inside, and that feels like a really cozy little cafe. We didn't get, the Starbucks in there. We didn't get Caribou Coffee in there. And again, nothing against those places. They're down the street. M150, which is Rochester Road, has anything you want. M59 has everything else that you might want. So
Right.
Christie's done a good job with our board and our city council saying, it's important to know, we do not say you can't have chains in town. You could have a Starbucks here. You could have a Subway. You could have a Banana Republic. You could have whatever you want here. They just choose not to come here because that's not our thing. So why force a round peg in a square hole? We keep getting these one-off places. For instance, in the Daniel Bryant building on the south side of town, on the east side, it's an advertising firm. Times have changed. He doesn't need as many employees. They're putting a little coffee shop in there at the bar that used to be in that office. Yeah, that used to be an office building. It used to be a restaurant owned by Jimmy Schmidt, and he had a bar in there. They kept that when Daniel bought the building for his inside of his office, but they were kind of like shoot each other with rubber arrows. They're very creative people. And they kept the bar in there. Now they're going to turn that into a coffee shop for the public to go in and see what it used to be.
That's
kind of
cool.
cool. Yeah.
Very, very
So
nice. All right, I have a question from the audience, and if you guys have any questions at Adams or in here, please shoot these questions now because we've got about 15 minutes left. John, what's your question? You gotta be loud. Don't come forward. You already answered. What was it?
I was going to say, is it Penn Station a chain?
Penn Station is owned by the Marconi family.
Yep.
It's a franchise.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. What was the question?
He said, isn't Penn Station a chain?
So yeah, so you could call it that. Yeah. So the thing is, it's owned locally. So by us, the chain is operated by the chain. So Bernie, who just retired, actually sold Penn Station to his son. That's his business. Just like La Macaron, technically that's a chain, but David owns that franchise. So they don't back him. They don't give him money. He pays for the right to have that franchise, but it's his franchise. So you're right. That's a good observation. Technically, that's a chain. And there's anytime you have more than one of the same, like Bakehouse 46, that's also in Birmingham. So I guess technically it's a chain, but in our mind, chain is corporately owned, and we don't have those.
Right. And you want local control. You want the business owner to have control. And so
And they have skin in the game. They have skin in the game, then they work harder.
Right, absolutely. Any questions from Adams over there? Well, we're segueing into a few other things before we're done. Please shout out if you have any questions. All right, so as you know, we're doing a new project this year. I like to reinvent things, and I'd like to thank Mr. Mavis for introducing this project to me. Probably 2 days before the semester started, and then we were all over it, and we're like, yes, we totally want that, right, Tom?
All right.
We are going to be designing our own city, and so if you were going to design a city from scratch, like you were able to put in the Banda city of the 5 nations or whatever it is. I'm just making
Bandamania. We'll call it
Bandamania. There you go. Perfect. What are the key things that you believe every city needs? What are the key things that you believe that every city needs?
So did you guys in theory, buy 3.2 square miles of flat ground and starting from that? Is that how you're doing it?
Yeah, that's how we're doing it.
All right, so this is how old I am. Back in the 70s, there was a game that came out called Intellivision. It was the very first gaming console. It was after Atari, if you can believe that. And in that program, you got a flat piece of ground and you had to build a city. I think right now there's one called Sim City, not Sin City, but Sim City. So if you go to those, they're amazing things because they give you a flat piece of ground and say, oh, here you go. So what do you have to do first? You have to build the infrastructure. You have to put the pipes in that take the poop. You have to put the roads in that can get the cars there. You have to put the water mains that can get in so people can drink water. So if you're starting from your basic elements, number one, you'd have to get the whole property zoned, just like this future land use map. You'd have to sit down with your city fathers, your new city council that you all are, and decide what do you want to be when you grow up. Do you want to be an industrial city? Do you want to be a regional hub for retail? Do you want to have multiple family apartments? Do you want to have single family apartments? What do you want your tax base to be to provide the services that the people that are going to live there are going to need? Now, in Southfield, on some bad nights of city council meetings that last until 3:30 in the morning, I remember my Mayor Donald Fracassi would say, my ideal city is a city with no residents because nobody can bitch at me ever again. So I'm going to build a city that's office, commercial, and no people. All the people will live around my city, and then I'll be the king of the city because I'll vote for myself. I'm the only one that lives in the city and we're good. That's probably not going to happen. So what you would do is first build your infrastructure, right? Roads, sewers, all the utilities, your phone lines, gas, electrical, cable, the internet stuff, whatever you call it. Fiber, thank you, the fiber underground. And that's how you start. And then you have to decide how much of that do you need by what uses do you want, right? And then now you have to have, you should be, if you're not having your own hospital or near it, you need a hospital. You're going to need schools. You're going to need a city hall, right? You're going to need a public works department division somewhere that all the trucks can be where they're plowing your snow, fixing your sewers, all that good stuff. So that's the basic infrastructure. And then you decide, do you want to be only a low-rise community? I don't want anything over 2 stories. Much like Rochester Hills, for a long time when it was Avon Township, there were no high rises or mid rises. Southfield, we decided back in the 60s, we're going up. We're going to be like Detroit. We're going up to 30-story buildings. That's a decision you make as a community. Do you want to keep it low key or do you want to go intense and high? So you have to make those kind of decisions as what development you want to do. And then do you want a regional mall or do you want individual boutique shopping places? So, and again, you would develop your future land use plan around those decisions that you have to make as to what you want to be when you grow up. That's what I always call it. So planning first, it would take you a while to get the feel of it. And if there's no people living there, that the people that make those decisions are the city council or the township board, whatever that might be. So,
Okay.
And then you start encouraging development, right?
Yeah. And this is all great. And I appreciate your input. And I think we're missing a fire station, a police station, a couple of
That's
things.
at the municipal complex. You would do that at the municipal complex. Yeah.
Municipal. All right. At the city hall area. Perfect. Excellent. All right. So I know Christy's not here, but if we could just segue a little bit into what does the Downtown Development Authority do? So in your eyes, if you're speaking on behalf of Christy right now, what does the DDA do for our city?
And so this is cool. So if I was making a new city, I would create a downtown development district and I would create a principal shopping district, the PSD. So before Christy even got here, she used to work in marketing for the DDA. The city made a decision to put boundaries on a downtown area and created what's called a DDA TIF, TIF.
So that's, hang on a second. So that's the red area of your zoning, would you say?
Yeah, it's close to it. Yeah, it's actually at Walnut to East Street, bridge to bridge on Main Street.
Hang on, I might have a map. Hold on a second.
Yeah, there's a DDA map. Yeah, if you go to city maps, you can get that.
Yeah,
that's very important, actually. So.
Keep talking.
Okay, so once you create that district, then you follow a new set of laws called the Downtown Development Authority laws. So what that does is it says to the city partners with an independent board. The DDA is formed, they create their own board, and all the tax dollars within those boundaries are frozen from the year you create it. So in our town, from 1984 until today, any new tax dollars, the incremental tax dollars that go up on that property, so every year the values go up, say 3%. They capture those dollars, and then that's the parking one. So they're allowed to use those for things that are eligible under Downtown Development Authority. So right now, our DDA is the most well-funded in the state of Michigan. they get about $1.8 million a year that goes to Christie's board. They decide how to spend it. They have to build, they can do business retention or development. So you can train, they put on seminars for how business should run their businesses. You can use it for infrastructure. So we are going to rebuild 4th Street, for instance, this year. And last year we did all the sidewalks that were broken in town in the DDA. We took that money and then redid the sidewalks. All the lights in town were $1 million in the downtown district. Over 8 years, we're going to spend $1 million of the DDA's money to replace all the hook and bells and all the lantern lights on Main Street. And then it pays for Christie's studio. It doesn't pay for events, all right? It pays for business development and infrastructure. So then on top of that, and so she spends that money and uses that money to leverage to get other grants to do more things. Like they have the Wall of Fame, we called it, on University. They built that project. They built all the river walk under the bridge by Main Street on Pink Creek. They used that money to redo that whole area, make it beautiful, the fountains and all that stuff. And then we rebuilt Main Street and did all the downtown landscaping with DDA dollars. Then on top of that, you put a principal shopping district where the actual merchants pay so many pennies per square foot into a pot that Christie runs that with Taylor and Jenna. And that's what they raised. They get $280,000 from that. They raise another $400,000 through sponsorships. And that's the 115 event days that take place downtown. All the events downtown get funded through the PSD. And then the DDA takes some of that money and puts $250,000 a year into the big bright light show. $150,000 a year. They pay for that. It takes $250,000 to put the lights up and down every year, but they get sponsorship. So that's kind of where you use the DDA.
Yeah, let's just talk about that. The map I put up on, I know it shows all the parking, but everything that's in blue is the DDA. So anybody that's part of the DDA does get these levels of support. They get free marketing. They get all of these extra things. And she always talks about, and again, we'll bring her in, but she talks about the big bright light show bringing in the vast amount of money for businesses. What is the number that she quotes for that? I can't remember it.
In one 32-day period, the businesses make 42% of their yearly income, especially the restaurants.
Yeah.
It's huge. It's huge.
42% of their annual income comes from a 32-day window. It is. It's absolutely amazing. All right. Well, we are running out of time. We've got like 3 minutes and Val's going to go. Just a couple of things that we talked about, a couple of business failures. What other epic failures, and just give me the names of the businesses, we can look into them a little bit more, that have happened on Main Street or happened in the city. What failures have we had?
Right now, and the guy would hate me for saying this, but it's the truth. The Chapman House on Walnut, right off of Main Street, he spent almost $5 million renovating that and just can't make it work as a French restaurant, whatever. Somebody tried a hookah lounge up on University where Recipes is now, and they failed because nobody here, that's not their thing. It's more of a cultural thing. And we have that demographic here.
And we also had the Irish fish and chip shop.
Yep, that's true. So some guys came in from Shelby in a blue collar community that people like to eat greasy foods and whatever on Fridays. And he came in, we told him, you're probably not going to make it here because you don't have any parking out front. He was right on Main Street and it takes too long to cook the fish and the shrimp and all that stuff. So we told him, you're not going to make it. And he made it exactly 8 weeks.
Okay, last question. Which is the biggest success you've seen on Main Street?
Probably Cruz and Muir. What Mr. Cruz has done, all of his restaurants just kill it. He's a good man.
Yes. All right. We love and appreciate you so much. You're one of my best friends. I adore you. I hope your son's doing really well in his new job and house and everything. Excellent. We missed them on Linwood. And you must pop over and see the work that I've done on my house. It's absolutely stunning. So,
did you get permits for it?
I have the green little cards for plumbing and electrical. Everything is above board. It's all good.
Hey, Tom, I call bull crap on that, but that's okay.
All right, thank you.
I know her.
Thank you.
All right, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
No, we appreciate you. And we'll be coming downtown to see you soon. So we'll
That's a
come and
deal.
visit. Okay?
Okay, all right, guys.
We'll let
Thank you so
go.
much.
Thanks
Welcome.
so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.